And for anybody watching or listening who's dealing with their own obstacles, they're either unable to get out of bed every morning, they feel like they aren't enough, and they're just sick of living a life that they're not comfortable with. What is your advice to them?
I think it's you have to look at where you are, and if it's not comfortable or it's not fulfilling you, there has to be changes no matter how hard it is. You
Hmm.
have to be willing and able to make changes. And again, it's certainly not simple, and I would never make light of, oh, just change your mindset. It's not as easy as that, but it's certainly finding a shift in your perspective. And so one of the things I talk about is being a wheelchair user. I'm so thankful I can drive a car with hand controls, but I hate putting my chair in my car.
Hmm.
And it's maybe 3 minutes it takes me,
Yep.
but it irritates me that I have to take those extra 3 minutes. And if I'm running behind, I'm 3 more minutes behind than an able-bodied person. And so it frustrates me, but worse for me would be not being able to drive and being fully dependent on other kinds of transportation. So that's the shift in perspective that I have to make. Sometimes daily. Sometimes I'm just like, eyes rolled up, like I don't want to do this, and then I'm like, oh, but I love driving my car.
Yeah.
And so, and sometimes it has to be really simple shifts. Like you have to start baby steps and just start with really, really small things. But I think being able and willing to shift our perspective and find, it's a bit cliche, but find the silver lining and find a
Hmm.
reason that this is better than, like, this might suck and be hard, but it's still better than the alternative.
Hmm.
And I think if you can find those in some small things, then you can start to find that shift in perspective in the bigger picture and start to move forward.
And how would somebody find that shift in perspective? Let's say it's somebody who's going to university but doesn't see the value in getting an education, or doesn't have hope because of what's happening in the world. How does somebody like that shift their perspective on things?
Mm. I think in those kinds of instances, it's just, like I said, picking something small. And so maybe there's one class at university that has more meaning to them than the others. So just focusing on that one part and being like, well, this class is worthwhile, um, makes everything else that I think
Hmm.
not
Yep.
worthwhile. Or, and because I feel like as our world continues to change and maybe be worse than it used to
For
be
that,
or be
yeah, I agree.
different. I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
the word, but I used to always think there would be more and more places we could travel instead of fewer places
yeah.
we could travel. But so it does weigh on me a little bit too, that the world is more difficult or going through more challenges. But in those instances, I'm just trying to shift my perspective on maybe like my local community first,
Hmm.
and maybe simple things like someone opening the door for me when I'm struggling, like just to be like, oh, there are good people, there is still humanity.
Yep.
And so if really, really little things first, and then I think when you can find the positive in the small things, you can start to grow that mindset.
Yeah. I love that because I feel like we're all focused on the big picture, and we were talking about this before actually the podcast. But a lot of the people I meet, for example, we were talking about the university example because I know lots of students and aspiring business owners or people
Mhm.
looking to get into the workforce are going to be watching this. But they have, let's say, 3 years left in their degree. And they'll be there thinking, oh my God, I have to do this for 3 more years. But they're not focused on the smaller picture where for another 3 years, I have certain freedoms that I may not have after the 3 years, or I have friends, I have this group that I can hang out with every single day with no repercussions, right? When you're older, you can't do that. So it's just a matter of finding those really, really small things that give you even 1% happiness or fulfillment.
Absolutely.
And that just keeps you going.
Hmm. And I think that when you find the 1%, then it's easier to find the next percent, and then it's 5% and 10%. And when you can start small, then it kind of blossoms.
Yep. Is that the type of framework you use to get kind of past the experiences you were facing when you were getting treatment? So post-accident, you were in the hospital for 11 months, if I'm not mistaken, and you were traveling very often, different hospitals. You had a total of how many operations and surgeries?
Around 25.
Wow. So 25 surgeries at the age of 6, between the ages of 6 and 8.
Yes.
Wow. So is that the type of mental framework you use to get through that?
Yeah, like I really remember after surgery, there were little things like coming out of anesthetic, of course, first would be terrible, but I started to learn that was a short amount of time. And then often there would be medical devices like a nose tube for drainage, or like a drainage tube in my leg or something to help me heal. And as each piece came out or got changed, like if the nose tube came out, it was like, oh, I'm that one step more now to feeling better and leaving the hospital. And once, say, if I'd had surgery and stitches came out, so I kind of had to look at those steps. And even though I was young, I did learn that, be like, okay, it's really bad right now. Maybe tomorrow my nose tube will come out. Maybe in 5 days my stitches will come out and I can move easier and there won't be as much pain. And so, yeah, even young like that, I learned to look at the steps and not be like, oh, I want to be home and back at school, because then you have to look at, if you look that far ahead, it's almost insurmountable because there's so much in between. But if you're just looking at each step one at a time, it's much easier to feel the success and pass those steps.
And throughout the book, you talk about family. You talk about your parents, your siblings, your father, specifically also your grandfather, your coaches. You've had so many people influence your decision-making, support you in the problems you were facing, and then also help you achieve the things that you've achieved. In my generation, I do feel like a lot of people think they can do things on their own. They think they can, any challenge that comes to them, I can do it on myself. And even as an entrepreneur, we see that they think that they don't need a team. They think that they can do things on their own and they can build the businesses on their own. And we're told, it's a one-man show, or, this is a self-made man. But do you really believe in that?
No, I think that we all need supports. Like, right from the time I moved home with my family, I was 7 years old and in a wheelchair that I had never been in before. And I wouldn't have been able to build the independence and the strength that I did without support. Like, I still had chores like my siblings did. My parents didn't let me, not that I didn't want to slack anyway, but also they wouldn't have let me. Like, it was very much okay, you're in a chair. That doesn't change the way everything else in life happens. So it was still teaching me independence, pushing me towards independence, wanting me to have good grades in school, and all of that was the same. And so without that in the beginning, I certainly wouldn't have built toward the independent life that I have. And I've seen other people through my career, just in life, that have had disabilities who weren't encouraged and supported in the same way. And maybe they still lived at home in their 30s or 40s, or they didn't find their strength or their power. So I definitely believe that you need people around you to help. And I think there are times that people around you, if you do have your own self-doubts, which everybody does at some point, that they can help cancel those. And that was particularly the case with my coach, Mandy. I certainly had times in the pool where I was like, man, I can't do that next 50 or that next 100, or I'm not going to make the time I need in that race. And she was definitely the countering voice of constantly like, no, we've done it before, or it doesn't matter. I know you can do this just based on knowing you. And so, yeah, I believe we definitely need a team, and it's pretty hard to build the life that you want completely independently, or the business that you want, or the athletic career. I don't think any of it can be fully on your own.